They're cheating and they're not even hiding it. At this point, they're just telling you exactly what the playbook reads, how they're going to go into it. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the election coming up. The primaries are upon us right now for 2026. And what we're seeing is we're seeing things that are happening in Knox County, in Anderson County, out in East Tennessee. I'm going to show you examples of what's happening in Ohio. Also, too, what happened in a special election in Nashville, Tennessee, as well, to bring this all together and show you the timeline of what's actually happening. So again, when people tell you what they're doing and they're going to be doing it fraudulently and cheating, you should believe them. So let's head out to Knox County. Now, Knox County, Tennessee is a population of just over 500,000 people. In there, there's two municipalities. There's Knoxville and there's Farragut. So what we're talking about is actually Knoxville, the city of Knoxville. I want to introduce you a person you might not know. Maybe you have heard of her, of Amelia Parker. Now, Amelia is on the current city council. So she serves there. She ran as a Democrat. She won as a Democrat. She kind of goes through, you can read her byline of what's going on, and what she believes in, where she grew up, all the different things in this scenario. Now, again, going back to it, she was a Democrat. Okay. I would say she probably is, but that's up to her. But she ran factually as a Democrat, and that's where how she got elected. Now, what's happening right now in this election coming up in 2026 is she put out this Facebook post. Now, here is the Facebook post on here, April 12th. So at the time I'm doing this right now is a couple days ago, just as early voting starts. So early voting begins, obviously, mainly in Knox County. Now, again, they're going to be talking about the sheriff's race. I am not endorsing any sheriff candidate on this video. So the names are on there. My apologies, but I also don't want to just take it out because that would be the ruin of what I'm trying to put through here. So she will pull a Republican ballot to vote in the sheriff's race. This will be my first time pulling a Republican ballot, and it will be hard to do with all the hate spewing from the Republicans, like projectile vomit, covering our communities in a rights-violating gunk that takes time to dismantle. I love that word. At both the state and federal level. However, I feel it important since only Republicans are running for sheriff. Meanwhile, the only contested race, and she goes on to talk about one in D1 in her district, early voting, primary election. Please, Knox County, let's work together to elect good, compassionate leaders who will do what is best, not only for the many, but also for the few. Well, that doesn't sound like a Democrat. I'm not sure what else does. But looking at this, so understand there are 4 people running for sheriff in Knox County. 4 of them are Republicans, not a Democrat. But the idea is you can't vote for them. So they're going to pull a Republican primary ballot on this scenario and then vote. Now, do you think they'll just stop at the sheriff's race and only vote for the sheriff, or do you think they're going to go down the ticket? Now, the important thing is, who are they voting down the ticket? Because we know they are. Now, what they're going to look at possibly is voting in, let's just say, quote unquote, the weakest Republican out there, the person that maybe shouldn't win, but more importantly, the weakest person on the Republican side that will lose to a Democrat in the general. So that's the important distinction. Right now in Knox County, we have 3 people, 3 Republicans running for mayor of Knox County, and there is 1 Democrat. Well, wouldn't it be great if there were 3 Republicans spent all of their money, they beat each other up, and then you elected the weakest one because they got the Democrat crossover, and then the fresh and healthy Democrat decides to come in there with all the money and just take out the Republican. That's what they're looking to do. So this Amanda Kretschmann, she responds to this thing, and I'm only paying attention to the last one. And again, I apologize for the candidates that are running for sheriff, but I do think this is important. To vote for Brett Gibson or one of the other sheriff candidates, you need to vote in the Republican primary. You can only choose 1 ballot for the primaries. This does not affect your vote in any way. In the future, you can vote in the Republican primary and then vote for all Democrats in the general election. Normally, I would drawn to vote in the Democrat Party, but there's only 1 office in all of Knox County School Board for District 1. So that they're telling you exactly what they're doing. Now, if you look at it, look at additional information, important information. The primary ballot will contain language requiring your allegiance to whatever party's ballot you pull. She tells you exactly right there that there is language that you have to pledge allegiance. Now, I like this comment right here from Sherry Garrett here. That allegiance form is under penalty of perjury. Are you willing to suggest that folks commit perjury? This is coming. Amelia Parker, as a Knoxville City Council member, she wants her people to commit perjury. The rest of the comments are interesting as well, but let's go to what she's talking about. So this is the actual scenario of what they're going to say. This is where I want to look at right here. The revised oath on the application. So this is October 20th, 2025, and you prepare the upcoming 26 election. This is what is going to be on there. I request a ballot to vote in this election and declare under penalty of perjury that I reside at the above address and am registered and qualified voter in the precinct in which I am offering to vote. I also declare I have not previously voted in the election. Now, all of those things I can agree with, no problem, obviously, but nor will I attempt to vote again in this election. If this is a primary election, I am a bona fide member of and affiliated with the political party in whose primary I seek to vote, or I declare allegiance to the political party in whose primary I seek to vote and state that I intend to affiliate with that party. So no, I'm sorry there, Amanda Kretchum. You cannot change your vote, even though statistically you can, but under penalty of perjury. So are you willing to perjure yourself in order to just vote for the sheriff in Knox County? That's the question that everybody needs to answer if they go to the polls and vote, and they are a Democrat, as a Republican. At this point, I want to introduce somebody you might not have heard of. Her name is Afton Bain. If you're outside Tennessee, you might not have seen her, but there wasn't a special election recently that she got edged out by Matt Van Epps. Now, this is Nashville, Tennessee. You would imagine that Nashville, country music, everything else going forward. Let me introduce you to this video that they took. This is Afton Bain. Such a gem, isn't she?
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Okay, this is great. We've got our girl squad and we're bullying the ICE vehicles and state troopers. So this is a win.
The Republicans decided that they're going to start this narrative that me, the state representative who represents downtown Nashville, doesn't like the city.
Because I hate the city, I hate the bachelorettes, I hate the pedal taverns, I hate country music. I hate all of the things that make Nashville, apparently, an it city to the rest of the country, but I hate it.
Sure, I get mad at the bachelorettes sometimes. I get mad at the pedal taverns, right? And you're talking to someone who has cried no less than 10 times in the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Well, I'm currently involved in a transformative justice seminar, and so it's
okay, transgender, what she just said, the seminar. We're going to be coming to that as well. I'm going to show you examples from that happened in Anderson County.
how to imagine a world without police and what that looks like and what community mechanisms look like, especially for those of us, that are young, and talking to our parents about what police abolition looks like, that, we can do it and there is a world.
You said in those since deleted tweets that the
Just watch the way she dodges this question. Absolutely, 100%.
Metropolitan Nashville Police Department should be dissolved. Another cheered on a teachers union saying that defund the police should be a requirement for schools reopening. And another saying good morning, especially to the 54% of Americans that believe burning down a police station is justified. Do you still stand by those comments? Oh. And if not, is there anything you want to clarify?
I'm not going to engage in cable news talking points, but what I will say is that our communities need solutions. We need local people deciding, solving local problems with local solutions.
So you don't want to clarify whether you still believe that the police should be defunded?
Once again, I don't remember these tweets, but what I'm saying is that
I'm not asking you if you remember.
Isn't that the truth though? Like whenever Democrats get caught, like the Clintons or anything else, they're like, I don't remember. I don't remember doing that. I don't know. I mean, come on. Yeah.
What is your position today? How's that on this issue?
I mean, once again, I'm here to talk about my race.
My therapist always asks me to transcribe my dreams when they happen. And the recurring dream I've had is
talking to our therapist,
standing up in a cafeteria full of women. I don't know why I was there or whatever, and saying, I don't want children, I want power, and just screaming it at the top of my lungs. The deeply patriarchal.
When they tell you what they want in their dreams and they're telling their therapist that, not that there's anything wrong with the therapist, but at the same time, like, I want power. I want this. I don't want kids because I want power. Believe them.
Structures that these women are involved with because they've chosen marriage, and they've chosen to raise children. And I think in the South, it's incredibly difficult to shake those.
Some committees open up with prayer. We also stand for the pledge. And there are also prayer groups in the legislature that meet routinely. There are Christian pastors that have a lot of say and proximity to power in the legislature and dictate a lot of what the power players do. And it is uncomfortable.
Every legislative session, I promise to carry a trans bill of rights so that we can push back against the far right narrative that is being emanated by Matt Walsh and the Daily Wire, who have set up their home in Nashville. And I promise to do that. I promise to fight for our trans community. We identified threats from right-wing groups that they would show up at these Trans Day of Visibility events and threatening our trans kids. And so I had a snapped moment where I decided we need more people talking about the protections for trans kids in our trans communities at the legislature every day.
Special thanks to the Daily Caller, obviously going forward. But yes, well done video on Afton Bain. Now we're going to get to her. We're going to go back about 7 years as well, as I'm going to introduce a person named Nate Mullins. Now, Nate lives in Anderson County, Tennessee, and a population of about 80,000. We're going to get into it. But the absolute way this is all coming right now, the Democrats, the progressives, are certainly playing the long game in this whole scenario. The long game, as in they plant the seeds and they move it on from there. So, Mr. Mullins, I'm going to bring him in.
Anderson County is spooky because, you get this weird mix. You got a lot of traditionalists with good old country values up there on the ridge lines and the coal mining country, where you think everything is good and safe and sound and solid. Yeah. And then you get the infiltrators coming in.
Okay. Well, let's start. How many people are in Anderson County for sure? Like what?
It's about 80,000.
80,000. Okay.
And then some of those people head into Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge gets half their population from Knoxville and Anderson County for the plants. Okay. But it's been the bastion of conservative values out there in the county, and that's why it popped up on the radar of certain groups. Okay. One of the things we're seeing, similar to what y'all seeing, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the exact same people, are these groups funded by what is called Indivisible. Okay. Indivisible was real confident that nobody would figure out their funding stream. And then all of a sudden, George Soros got on the radar of the Trump administration, because a lot of people, Open Society Foundation was funding every kind of degenerative legal attack in the country, trying to take away the rights to go at crime through the DAs. They were funding a lot of the agendas being pushed into the schools. This is the money messenger was Indivisible, and Knoxville has a group. Every large town has a group. Yeah. And this funding money that Trump tried to go at has not been cut enough. I mean, he jumped in and like the hero would and try to fix it, but is still pumping funds into candidates. And that's where the rubber hits the road. All these political functions, all these races, if the Dems see a candidate that they can manipulate, a Trojan candidate supposedly, to bring their values, who's willing to flip, and oh goodness gracious, a politician willing to be duplicitous, goodness gracious me, they'll buy them, and they'll say, okay, well, we got your back, we're going to fund you, but here's what you want you to do. You're going to run as a Republican now.
Okay. Well, let's just back up real quick. Anderson County, completely red. You kind of mentioned that, but we're talking red, Republican, hardcore, anti-transsexuals, I would imagine. We did a whole interview about the library being penetrated by pornography and what was happening with children's books, other red values that we have, Second Amendment, that kind of thing. American flag, for that matter. I mean, you can fly an American flag there and not be labeled a racist or some other weird thing that some Democrat would say. And also Indivisible, you mentioned them too. Those are the people that are standing on the street corner in their inflatable frog costumes, screaming at cars that they're, no kings. Just make sure that is who I'm talking about, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So hardcore red county, and there's no chance the Democrat's going to win there either, right? I mean, possibly. Right.
That's the insight. Is there would not have been a chance in a red district for a obviously blue candidate.
Someone sees the D and they're immediately like, no, we're not. I'm voting for the R at this point.
So the clever money is on the strategy and the activists and the organizer to say, hey, we got your back money wise. You flip and run as a Republican in a red district, and we've got you. You're more likely to get in. And here's the clincher, particularly in the midterm primaries. See, that's when everybody's eyes are off the ball.
You're right. It's not a presidential race. It's the midterms. Who cares about the midterms? Because what could change?
It's spooky because they did get us in our weak chain link there. Yeah. You know, we even myself 5 years ago, if you'd have asked me the significance of a midterm primary, I would have been like, you know, and most people are like that. They go into the voting booth and they go, oh, I see an R here. I'm going to vote R or D. Well, they know, these activists, through the upper chain of the Soros Foundation, that's what people do. They show up and they forgot their list and they go, oh, there's an R, there's a D. So if they can sponsor somebody to flip the script and run against an incumbent as the other in a red district as a Republican when they're really not, they'll fund it. They're more than happy, you know.
Yeah. So that's what you're seeing now. And right now in this election, we're talking about the primaries. It's April of 2026. Who's up for election right now in Anderson County?
Republican incumbent, solid, and then Democrat is the one who. See, what was a Democrat is now a Republican.
Okay.
Because of the loophole. Okay. The guys in Nashville, the big dogs, aren't closing the primaries because their excuse is the Trump phenomenon where you're going to get a bunch of people trying to flip and vote Republican at the last minute who were Democrat. They may have a point, but the problem is in the next 5 years, our country can get wrecked and all the progress can get wrecked by these activists saying, we're going to run a candidate who's a Trojan candidate, who's our guy as a progressive, as a Republican. Yeah. And once we're entrenched, we'll just run them in the general too. And they've got more money than they know what to do with.
Yeah, if you can push them out at that point. But we're talking about the running for the county mayor. Okay.
Yes.
You have the sheriff up for election too?
Pretty much on the same ticket, sheriff and mayor.
Sheriff, mayor, same thing. And then we're talking, I would imagine you have county seats too as well, or national seats?
County seats, there's a lot of county commissioners and such are going to be running in August.
And so they're not on the ballot at this point.
Not quite.
So again, leading back to that point of what's important, if there's a very few people up for election right now, a few spots that are up for election. Who cares? Let's take this one off. We'll just worry about when in 2028 when the presidential election comes in, and that's why the midterms are so important. So you get a guy or female that comes in here and is bought and paid for because they don't have to worry about money because they're being funded by someone else in some silent PAC somewhere and not realizing, hey, the money's there, and they can run as a Republican with a big R behind them and they'll be elected.
You know so much more, and that's the average voter. That's the clincher with me is that the average voter trusts the system that their guys are and their person is D, and they know who to vote for simply by that. Not anymore. And here's where if you got to understand what's about to be happening in our nation and what is currently happening, there's source material. If you go to the Democrat organizer under George Soros, who controls many, many tens of millions of dollars, that's Zach Exley. He has a local representative in this area, not a stone's throw from here, called Corbin Trent, who in East Tennessee was AOC's primary scriptwriter for about 3 years.
Really? Wow.
Because these inside guys are the brains.
In Anderson County. Wow. All right.
And Anderson County is our own. We had Afton Bain, the Indivisible Funding Group, come into Anderson County and say, hey, I've got the money. Do you have the time? We've got the strategy. Do you have the candidate? You got a progressive? Go flip and run as a Republican and we'll back you. Afton Bain was, of course, disgraced because she said the quiet part out loud.
Sure she did, yeah.
You know, she don't like those Nashvillians.
Right.
Because she's in it as an ideologue. She's angry. She's bitter. She wants to attack the system on behalf of the Soros Foundation.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we saw that coming through with her. Now, when did she come exactly?
Well, we were fortunate. In 2019, Afton Bain came to Anderson County herself, and this was when she was still the leader for Indivisible. Okay. She was the shiny new candidate that was going to be run potentially in Nashville for a congressional seat at this time back in 2019.
Okay, 2019. So, all right. Okay, and she ran. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, she came to Anderson County, and she found a receptive audience. One of the more receptive individuals in the audience was the challenger for mayor currently in Anderson County. It so happens that, amusingly enough, that from 2019 to this point, that would have taken exactly that amount of time to vote in 5 Republican primaries, which is the requirement to switch parties. So
under the bona fide law, then, right?
Yes.
Bona fide rule.
So if you give the time frame to 2019 to today, now we have someone running as a Republican and against our chosen incumbent mayor with our correct value system,
who is a Republican as well,
who's much more legit, who had time to stand up for these things, and now there's a challenger who all of a sudden is Republican after voting 5 times. For just local Republicans, it didn't vote that way in a presidential capacity. He chose Kamala, for goodness sake. And so this is indicative of how strategists like Afton Bain with big pocketbooks, buckets full of money, come in and sway strategically, which could be in your link, in your content, with a particular agenda to find new candidates who are receptive to running the progressive agenda. Yeah. It is interesting how the time frame works there for this guy. And of course, now I was saying that 4 years ago. So now it is obvious now that we're up against a serious, crossover voting issue, because that's the sad twist to this is. The other side is great at networking. They get the memo. Yeah. The Democrats will vote in the Republican election in a mayoral race simply because they will know who their candidate is, who is now a convenient Republican. That's how they will. That is the new strategy, to push out incumbents and replace them with progressives. And this is being talked about in these links strategically. Used to be, your uncle, your granddad, and your dad told you that their guy was simply word of mouth. You trusted him. You was about trust. Today, it's about following the money. Soros has billions to dump, and they straight up tell you they're going to take out your incumbents.
Yep. They are definitely playing the long game. And even in a small county of 80,000 people in Anderson County, this is what we're up against. This is what we're seeing right now. Where does it stop? Where do we get off of this train? So, Dave, thanks for coming out. I appreciate it very much. It's good talking to you again. So, very good. And I want to point out this too. This is another video that was taken from Afton Bain talking about what exactly they're going to be doing. Let's play this.
Afton, thanks for being here. And first, I just want you to tell us, but especially everybody here, why is this election so important?
Yeah, well, first I want to say thank you so much. It feels like a homecoming. And I just want to elevate that Indivisible has just been such an institutional and foundational part of my story. You all trained me to be one of the best organizers I could be, and gave me the opportunity to run around the 7th District in 2017, 2018, through 2020, and to help build the capacity and the infrastructure, the progressive infrastructure we needed to actually win this race, which is why it's so competitive. So some context for folks on the call, Representative Mark Green decided to cash in on his corporate checks. He voted for the big ugly bill and then skipped town to Guyana, where he is doing something sketchy, probably, and thus catalyzing a special election in Tennessee. And it's the last flippable red to blue congressional district in the entire country. It's historically, and so for those of you that remember, Nashville was a consolidated Democratic district, and then after redistricting, they cut it into 3 pieces. And this is one of those pieces. And it just so happens that it includes some of the highest voter turnout precincts in Nashville, coupled with our Purple County, which is up by the Kentucky border and includes Fort Campbell. So it's a lot more competitive than people think. And we have been able to shrink the margin from about 20 to about 6. And so that is where we are right now. Our early voting data shows us we're about down by 4. Of course, the Trump PAC decided to jump in. They're spending about $2 million in a race that they didn't want to spend. The airwaves are saturated with attack ads, some from my Indivisible days. So they're going, full throttle. And
by the way, just to clarify, the Indivisible days, okay, the Indivisibles are the ones that are putting together all of the No Kings protests, and they're dressing up in inflatable frog costumes and stand on street corners and yell at people.
And what it's going to take to win is absolute turnout. And so I'm asking you all for the next 2 weeks, as you are able to make this election your entire personality. And so as you are able to phone bank, as you are able to donate.
Just want to clarify. I mean, your entire personality is going to be politics. Now, even I being in like the social media influencer world and all that stuff, my whole world is not politics. That's what a candidate is asking you to do. Like, dedicate your entire life to me to vote in this election. And that because our ideology is correct.
We can win it. It's just going to take everyone and their second cousin, as we like to say in Tennessee.
That's her second cousin. Yeah. So that's Afton Bain going forward on that one. I mean, you look at it, they're telling you exactly what's going on. Her Indivisible days from the late 2010s and what was happening to get her started for this. Now, here's another video as well talking about AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, this is a little bit older, but it is important to understand the timeline as well going forward on this one. But this is what's happening.
Maxed out on incompetence. So that is why we must choose a new path.
By the way, thanks to Mr. Reagan putting this out. The title is The Brains Behind AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
And that is what we embark upon today. What we need to do is take over the Democratic Party. And as Martin Luther King said when he did the Civil Rights Movement, he said he was doing it not just to help African Americans, but to save the soul of America. Here we're going to try to save the soul of the Democratic Party by boarding the Democratic Party ship and taking it over. How are we going to do that? We're going to run strong progressives. From now on, there will be a new wing of the Democratic Party, and it will be the Justice Democrats. We will seek social justice, economic justice, racial justice, and plain old justice.
Now, you might think, if Cenk wanted influence in government, why didn't he just run? If Saikat Chakrabarti wanted influence in government, I mean, despite his awkwardness, why didn't he run? Why put up AOC? The goals of this group are far grander and far more sinister than simply electing a single congresswoman to office. The goals are to take over the Democratic Party, eventually take control of Congress, and in turn, control the United States. And I know all of this sounds completely insane, but they have expressed their intentions very clearly on camera.
We're going to run hundreds of candidates, and we're going to primary all of the establishment Democrats. So we're not going to be like, is it Chuck Schumer? Maybe yes, maybe no, right? No, it's a hard no. But wait a minute now. Are you really going to primary vulnerable Democrats? Yeah, that's the whole point. If in 2018 we don't achieve our grand vision of a wholesale change in 2 years, which is very, very hard, we know that, right? Are you kidding me? If you got 6, let alone 12, let alone 24 people in Congress, you know what would happen in Washington? People would freak the hell out. They'd be like, oh my God, what in the world? These guys that had no money to begin with, no nothing to begin with, just put 24 people in Congress. Look, we want hundreds. We want to replace Congress.
In an article in Politico, one journalist wrote, "The group's criteria for picking primary targets is unclear and at times contradictory." Yeah, that's because their goal is not ideological. Their goal is control and power.
Washington doesn't care about beseeching. That's not how it works. They care about power. So primaries are an exercise in power. It's way past time that progressives exercise their power in this country. And that's exactly what these guys are doing.
Waleed Shahid, communications director for the...
Oh, from that there again, thank you, Mr. Reagan, putting those out there and doing the documentary on that. Go take a look and watch his entire thing. He actually has an AOC part 1 and part 2 as well, plus some other videos too. So that's what we're seeing on the aspect of all of those running. I mean, it is the progressives taking down weak Democrats at the same time, taking down any Republican for that matter as well. Now we're going to shift to Ohio and what's happening there too with the votes going forward. But this is something to look at.
Fake Republican is now booted out of the primary. You see, this case is Samuel Ronan versus the Ohio Secretary of State. And a little backstory before we take a look at what the Supreme Court did in a very short decision that is reverberating throughout the primary process there in Ohio. You see, Samuel Ronan was running as a Republican. Turns out, though, allegations are he's not actually a Republican at all, because Samuel Ronan ran to be the DNC chair. And this is a strategy that the Democrats are using to try to win elections. They want to insert themselves into the primary process such that if it's a red district, they can just win by proxy. As long as they can win the primary, then they're going to win the general because it's just a red district. So they'd rather not compete in their own primaries. Otherwise, it's going to be a strong red versus a very weak blue. Go into the primaries, dupe the Republican voters, see if you can win that, pretend to be a Republican, and then you win by default. And then you've got a sneaky Democrat who's actually inserted themselves and won the seat.
So as you can see, and it's often said that this election determines the rest of the history of man in the United States anyway. It always says that, but at this time you look at it and you're like, all right, under President Donald Trump, what does this mean? Now, even from the local elections going to the state elections to the national elections, be very careful. Understand who is running, who your candidates are. Understand what they believe. Look at their past references. Look at the past people that they hung out with. Look at the past people that they marched with or stood on a street corner with. This is important stuff. And you can say, I don't care about politics. No problem. Well, guess what? Politics care about you. And if you're going to be the pawn, the useful idiot in there, and just go along with whatever the whole thing is, whoever has the coolest sign or whoever's the loudest, the squeaky wheel, and that's who you're voting for, it could be the future of this country. Be very careful. And always remember at the same time to look at the truth between lines.